Hi, guys, and
Hey,
welcome to a new episode of Interventions of the Third Kind. Happy New
hey,
Year,
Happy New Year.
John!
Happy New Year. 2021 could not have gotten here any quicker.
Can you believe we're in 2021? It's like I cannot still believe we are into. I'm like, I never thought about this, you
I
know?
just have to say, I feel like I've almost had an entire year's worth of emotions in the past 22 days of this month. Okay.
I know.
Not touching on anything other than specifically saying it's been a roller coaster ride in the Norman Cell hassle. Okay. So,
Well, let me tell you something. This episode is special because we are going to be kind of following up on the last episode we had during December. We are talking about editing the message and stepping out of the conduit role and all that stuff. But today, we are going to talk about that remote interpreter out there. You know, nowadays, interpreters are working more from home. And not only you can be an employed interpreter, right? Working as an employee for a company, but you can also be a contractor interpreter. You are in charge of your own pay, of your own time, or your own schedules, on your own taxes. Are you also in charge of your training? But how do you get there if you don't know, if you don't have an idea, right?
I agree. I look forward to this interview. To pull in somebody from one of these telephone or video, and I mean, I guess as I understand it, in person, supplying the provision of all three modalities. That will be an interesting point of view because I'm pretty firm in my belief. It's a black and white. You do or you don't do this.
How do they handle it when you are not there? I mean, because when you're an employee, people keep track of your stuff. But when you are a contractor, people don't keep track of your stuff.
Oh
You
no.
have to keep track of your stuff. So, how do these companies work? That's why we wanted to bring in an expert, and we decided to bring in Mark Rockford from GLOBO Language Solutions. GLOBO is a huge telephone interpreting and VRI companies. Mark, thank you so much for accepting the challenge to come over to Interventions of the Third Kind to talk to us about this topic that we really want to discuss with an expert. That's why we were so thrilled that you said yes, that you were going to come over and discuss this topic with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thrilled is the right word. I am excited to be here. I'm very happy to accept this invitation.
Let's just go straight to the first question, Mark. You know, in our last episode, we were discussing a new trend that there's out there in social media about people, well, not people, but interpreters altering the message and editing messages. We wanted to know how your company handles that because we know that your company have not also dealt with interpreters that do it over the phone, but also video and in person as well. So how do you handle quality when it comes to those three modalities? How do you let people know how they are doing and what they are doing and how to do it better?
Okay, wow. Well, there's a lot in that question to unpack. Um, I will say that I do come from the on-site world originally, and I have since transitioned into, as you said, remote. So we do mostly telephonic and video, although we do obviously quite a bit of on-site prior to COVID. Um, but I have to tell you, I really fallen in love with the remote. So to me, that trend is the exact opposite of the way we want to go as interpreters, because interpreting at its core is taking a message that is not only given to you, it's entrusted to you. And the person giving it to you is really trusting that what they say, how they say it, that message that they are trusting you're going to give to the other person is given exactly the way they gave it to you. I like to use analogies or examples. So if I were to loan you my phone, would you bedazzle it? Would you put it in a new case? Would you do anything to it? No, it's not yours. You wouldn't even dream of it. So why would an interpreter dream of taking something that was given to them and changing it, altering it in any way, shape, or form? It doesn't make sense. Not only does it take away from the core function of an interpreter, it is also taking away the dignity and self choice of the person that gave you the message, because you just took their stuff and said, I don't think so. That's not what you should say. This is what you should say, not our choice. So how do we work with that? At Globo, we have taken a really novel approach, which is based upon my background, my experience, and my team members' experience, to work with interpreters so that they can listen to their own calls. And we take a non-judgmental approach because no one wants to go into a feedback session where the person is, I can't believe you did this, or what were you thinking? No. Look, we all make mistakes. We're all people. So what we do is we let them know way ahead of time before we even listen to their calls, before we listen to them together, how these calls are evaluated. They can evaluate themselves at any point in time. They can schedule calls where they want to evaluate the call with us. The point is, we want them comfortable. We want them to know that we're going into this together. We are partner businesses. And so we let them listen to their calls. We discuss it together, and we focus on a few key points, because if you focus on too much, no one's going to get anything, right? We want to focus just on a couple things that they can do better. And what we found typically is interpreters are very critical of themselves as far as accuracy and style. They really want to pick the best word. And where we really help them to improve is actually on protocol. And following good protocol prevents a lot of problems.
You said something very particular that let's say people that are on the phone or are listening to their calls are their own worst critics, right? And I suffer that every single time in my job. I mean, I'm my worst critic because I'm always trying to think, okay, maybe I should say it like this or like that, or maybe, next time I should use this or instead of that. It becomes the never ending game.
For sure. Yeah. Everyone is very harsh on themselves. But to me, it all comes back to just thinking, did I do the best job I could do at that time? Did I fulfill my function as an interpreter and get the message across in an understandable way that is true to what was given to me? Right. So, yeah, there's probably, a million words that you're going to say, oh, if I'd only said this. But if they understood you, if you got it across, right, and you were, again, matching the original meaning, then you're good. You don't have to worry about it too much. I do encourage, of course, interpreters to continue to develop themselves professionally, keep learning. And the beauty of being on the phone and remote is you can look those things up on the fly, right? There's word reference, there's Lingua, there's a bunch of other online dictionaries. Even Google can be helpful, right? I'm not saying Google Translate, guys. Don't take me down that road, but we all forget words, right? We all forget. It's on the tip of your tongue. You just can't get it out. Google it. Super quick.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to go ahead and play, let's say, the devil's advocate here, right? I mean, because bottom line is we started on this whole lengthy conversation, Lorna and I, based on things that I'm hearing. I'm all over these different forums online and jumping into conversations when I shouldn't be, and I don't even know who these people are, and et cetera. But I'm always in there wanting to throw the rule book down, and be like, you can't do that. You can't do that. Okay. So, as I understand it, GLOBO handles every modality, whether it's, of course, right now we're not doing much in person, I wouldn't think, anywhere in the field, but if it were, so we've got all three covered. We've got in person, we got the video, we have telephone. So my question is there a different approach as far as, okay, again, the devil's advocate here, I got some colleagues that would say it's different when you're in the room. Okay. When I'm in the hospital, I have to fix things. And you know what? I know these doctors. Okay. And some of them don't like it when people are rude. And you know what I'm saying? So when I hear something that I know Dr. Johnson's not going to appreciate, I just, I'm not going to be rude to him. So I won't do it, and like I said, I jump into these conversations. You can't do that. You can't do that, because I'm like the short list of expletives is the first page in my notepad every day. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, no, this is what you're supposed to say. So I'm curious if there's what's your overall approach, I guess, versus, all three of these modalities regarding the editing or the altering or the omission, as it would be. And this is based on what the interpreter chooses to do. Remember now, this is their, well, I don't think that that's going to be appreciated, or as it would be, applying to the LEP. I don't think the LEP will understand.
I get into a whole nother territory multiple questions. Again, a lot to unpack.
We do that. Yeah, it's a shotgun blast.
The first thing I want to say is, what changes in the responsibility and functions of an interpreter based upon modality? And let me limit myself to spoken language, right? Because I'm not a sign language interpreter. So let's focus on that. And my response to you would be absolutely nothing. The core function is the same. Take the message you were entrusted with, give it to the other person, and let them respond. You're still in the middle, conduit, right? What changes about the code of ethics? Nothing. We should still all follow the National Council on Interpreting Healthcare Code of Ethics. They even have these nice little standards of practice where they lay out everything and give examples that are basically for on-site, but apply to every other modality with just a slight tweak, right? So my response to that would be, you don't have to change anything. There are so many cases where that patient wants to curse at the doctor or the nurse or whatever, even if they get a shot and they're like, damn it, that wasn't directed towards anybody. Who cares, right? You know, carajo, me dolió, whatever. We're not gonna be like, darn it, that hurt. That's not even the same message, right? Keep your tone. They chose to say it that way, right? And maybe it's because they're not getting the service they are paying for, right? So if they're, ay, mugrosos doctores, nunca vienen cuando pongo no sé qué, and they just go off, that's their message. They are upset, right?
Mhm.
And if you don't transmit to the doctor, they're not going to be able to respond to the message because they didn't get it. You just interfered with communication. And I have yet to see an interpreter who wants to be called an interferer, right? So I mean, all the modalities, core function is the same. Yes, there are tweaks. Yes, on site, you're going to get to know the doctor. And I would even
Mhm.
argue that on site can be even more challenging than over the phone because it is hard to stay in the conduit role when you are right there in the middle of the trauma, when you are right there with the peer pressure and everybody looking at you and whatnot, right? But it's all the more important to stay in the conduit role on site, just as is everywhere else, because it's harder to stay invisible. But the core function is give the message as it was given to you and do not interfere with the situation because everything else that happens in the room is not the interpreter's responsibility. Think about this. English speaker in there, same situation.
Mhm.
Who is going to do anything on their behalf? The doctor, the nurse, the caseworker, whoever is supposed to be there, right? Not an interpreter, right? People will argue, oh, but there's a cultural difference. Yeah, but there's also a cultural difference between Alabama and New York, right? There are cultural differences all over the place, but that doesn't take away the person's ability and right to speak for themselves.
Not only is the wording, it's especially for people on the phone, you have to input the intention for which that wording was used. Even if it's a snarky comment, I make it with the same inflections that other person is doing it, because that not only is helping me communicate in between, and I have had those occasions when people start laughing after I have interpret something because they are like, I can't believe she just convey exactly the same, even the tone, everything. I mimic everything. And it's not trying to make fun of people or anything like that. I just want you to understand this was the way he meant it to say it. And since I'm not there in person, I mean, I cannot tell you with my face on video. I will tell you with my voice. To me, it's even difficult to change that message if it comes with an intention behind it, like when there's profanity involved. That comes with an intention. And if you just say the wording without any fluctuation in your tone or something like that, it doesn't mean the same.
I really love how we classify signed and spoken languages because right there it tells you what's your responsibility. So, as a spoken language interpreter, what's your responsibility? What is spoken, right? But that doesn't mean just the linguistic message. There's tone, there's speed, there's inflection. There's so much in there that's spoken and given to you, and you've got to again pass that right along. But that's the extent of my what I really need to do as a spoken language interpreter, because people are like, oh, I can see facial expressions and gestures, and so can the doctor. They're right there. If you're on site, are you mimicking them? And the doctor's like, you've got to take your medicine. Are you standing beside the doctor saying, you've got to take your medicine? No, you're not. I think any spoken language interpreter is going to say that's ridiculous. I wouldn't mimic their gestures. Exactly, because it doesn't have anything to do with the message that you're entrusted. That message goes direct, and direct communication is always best.
I just want to go ahead and confess. I feel like I'm in a safe place here. I'm remembering one of the hospitals where I worked. I was asked to step into this big HR meeting to talk about being careful with sharps containers. And so we had all of the English speaking folks over here and all of the non-English speakers in another area, in which I was basically standing in front of them. There's a big PowerPoint up on the wall, and the gentleman is trying to give his talk, and one of the English speaking ladies was very upset about the responsibilities that they were being given with the sharps containers. So she started this, well, I'm not going to be one of these people. And so I immediately started simultaneously interpreting that into Spanish. And then when she started pointing, I also started pointing. And I got to be honest, if I were to look at it now, it's like, wow, I mean, I was totally off the rails, but it wasn't a medical encounter, you know what I mean? And I was in the hospital just like, I got pulled in because they know I would do it, you know what I mean? But it was looking at it now and, you know, listening to this conversation, the truth is they could see her right there. So of course, the reason I was doing it was because she was interrupting and I didn't appreciate it. So it was me being passive aggressive, safe place, I thought. But just for the point, I agree that I also learned that you can change the tone of your voice and not actually yell interpret. If non-English speaker is really angry and yelling, you don't necessarily have to yell, you know, as much as the way I look at it is I usually use my normal voice all the time unless there's an emotion. And then I'm going to reflect it. You know, I'm not going to try and do the ups and downs of the normal intonation of the speaker per se, but carrying that emotion can be done without fully displaying the emotion. I think that's the big takeaway right there, you know, because I'm one of these, you know, flamboyant types that you were very angry. No, they were. The effect that you can have by making those movements. So yeah, I agree. It's definitely.
I would ask, in that encounter, Sean, who were they paying more attention to you? Both parties, not just the other language speakers, but I bet the English speakers were also watching
Oh, they were
you
loving it.
mimic the
Yeah,
other
they were
person.
loving
So
it. Yeah.
yeah, I think you were more of
Especially the
a
hand
distractor.
gestures.
I haciéndome payaso for sure. Yeah. So okay. I got another one for you. I got another question. This is your opportunity here. Essentially, I know you communicate regularly with your interpreting people, but what do you have? What's your advice on this for these people? Because obviously, what I'm planning on doing is jumping back into those conversations that I indicated before. See, look, Vice President right here says you don't do that either. This is what he said. So, you know, what's your advice to those people? And we say people, of course, we're talking about colleagues, you know, that see things a certain way. I think it's okay for me to leave that out, or, you know, I'm going to switch this around just because it's going to be easier to be understood, says the person who has no.
The first thing that those interpreters need to do is really ask themselves, why are they doing it? Right? Maybe it's that they're not comfortable using swear words. So if they're not comfortable using swear words, they need to practice. You need to build up your comfort level, right? Because people that are unfamiliar with things or don't do it often, it does make you uncomfortable. Think about dating, right? The first time you went on a date, I bet you were nervous, right? For sure. It's new, everything's happening, and we can all relate to it. Well, I think we can all relate to that. But the thing is, with swear words, most people see them as bad, right? And they don't use them in their daily lives, and there's a stigma attached to them. But that doesn't mean other people don't use them, and that's still the message they're giving you. The rude tone, man, I have trouble being confrontational. I am not a rude person, but if they're being rude, the way I look at it is have fun with it. You can be 20 different people in a day, right? You can be super happy. You can be depressed. Oh, poo. Eeyore is just so glum, right? Or you can be that really upset guy, or you could be the lady that you were imitating. And you just get to have fun with it because all of that are aspects of people that probably you don't act like every day. So just look at it as like a little escape and like, hey, this is what I get to do. I get to be not only an interpreter, but I'm partially a voice actor, right? And as long as you're on the phone and you're not visible, I mean, you can be doing the gestures, you can be really getting into your role, and that's fine. Just obviously don't like knock yourself over or something in your chair. But over the video, on person, inside, God, I can't even speak. In person or on site, you know, you definitely don't want to do that. You still want to be, you know, invisible. So yeah, I don't recommend that. And then once you figure out why you're doing it, you know, see if you can correct it. There's also people that have biases. We all have biases, right? But you don't even think about them. It is one of my biggest pet peeves, the change of register, because they're not going to understand. Well, geez, man, I am what I think a fairly decent judge of character, but in the first 30 seconds of a call, you can determine whether that person has a high school or college background, what they're going to understand, what they're not going to understand. You know, um, I've some of the smartest people you will ever find might have speech impediments. They might have thick accents. They might speak like a typical redneck or whatever you want to consider, and not sound very intelligent, and they have a doctorate, right? I have seen cases where interpreters were dumbing down the rendition, and the LEP turns to them and says, "I'm a doctor. Why don't you say what he's saying?" Right? So you can't prejudge those things. It is up to the original speaker, as it would be in an English situation, to be able to adjust what they are saying. Yes, I know we're going to get into culture again, where you can say, well, there's some things that don't exist. Perfect. Not my responsibility. Provided as the interpreter, that exact word does not exist. It's a concept I'm going to need you to explain so that I can interpret your explanation. Because guess what? It's the same thing that we do in English. Uh, what? An appendectomy? I've got a. What does that mean, doctor? I'm not explaining it. Doctor's explaining it. So leave the responsibility to the people that is their job on a daily basis, and they are fully and totally trained, qualified, educated to do that. Because as an interpreter, the job is hard enough. You have to be an expert in so many fields. You have to be able to think on the fly. And I don't know if you've ever seen the analogies, but interpreting is like mental basketball, like running up and down the court, making sure all the players are in the right place, being aware of everything, and dribbling the ball while moving, right? So it's tough. Why do you really want to add to the complexity by trying to take on the doctors, the nurses, and the social workers' jobs as well? No reason to.
And besides, it's not even necessary. When people like, when they don't understand something, I mean, doctors say the technical term. I try to say the technical term if I know it. If not, I try to look it up. But I mean, I don't try to go down because I'm thinking, like the other day, I said the word circumcision, and the lady said, "What is that?" And I said the same. I said, "What is that?" And she started explaining, but they were the ones who made that decision. It was not me. I just said exactly what I heard. I mean, same way when they say boob instead of breast, when you are interpreting, patients have said chiche, which is boob or tit. That is the word. I mean, and that's the word that I use. But then doctors or the lactation consultants, they say breast, they say beautiful wording, right? Because they are trained, just trying to match what they are saying so you can convey the same thing. And it's completely mentally exhausting. That's why I actually wanted to jump in and say, hey, and remember to take your breaks during the day so you don't start stuttering and going crazy in your brain, because it happens. It's a brain game, okay?
For
And
sure. I
Mark,
can't emphasize enough.
one more thing I actually wanted to ask you right now, since we are working mostly remotely. I mean, it's difficult to get that communication going, and it's difficult to kind of get up to date on all the things, especially when you are a contractor. So, what's your advice for those interpreters out there?
My first piece of advice is be proud of the job you do. For so many years, interpreting, especially telephonic interpreting, was looked at as like, oh, that's not as good as these other modalities. And geez, we just use it because we have to and there's no other choice. But that's not really the case because, as I mentioned earlier, spoken language, that's what you get over the phone. You get exactly the piece that you're responsible for. So that is so great to be a pure interpreter. So I am so happy that so many people are getting to experience telephonic interpreting. We've had so many on-site interpreters. They're like, I don't know. They started and they love it, right? So that's one. Professional development. There are all kinds of free webinars out there, so you can follow whoever your local associations are. And because we are remote with COVID, you don't have to follow your local associations only, you can look for other associations. So, if you want to go look at the CHIA, California Healthcare and Interpreters Association, or NAGIT, if you want to get into legal, National Association of Judiciary Interpreters and Translators, or if you want to just American Translators Association, get on mailing lists for educational providers. There are some really good ones out there that will tell you all of the upcoming stuff, right? And a lot of it's being offered for free or very low cost because there's a lot of opportunity. People need it. There's a hunger for it. And so you can always be learning if you want. My other piece of advice, I guess, would be don't limit yourself to just interpreting professional development, because so much goes into that, such as, you can learn shorthand to take better notes. There are courses out there for stenographers and other things that you can learn a lot of different tips. You can learn from sales training to be better with your voice and your inflections. You could learn from singers who are really good at warming up their voices and taking care of themselves throughout the day and making sure that they don't lose their voice. Customer service representatives in a huge variety of fields, because no matter what you think of yourself as, you're a business. So as an interpreter, you need to take care of your business. That means taking care of your clients, making sure they're going to keep buying from you. And there's a lot of things you need to do that. Not just provide them with a quality interpretation, but be friendly, have a great setup at home, invest in your business just like anywhere else, standardize what you do, know what your competition and your peers are doing. So keep looking around, keep learning, and don't just get comfortable. It's easy as a human being to fall into a rut and just stay where we're at. I've been doing this for 20 years. I am good enough. No, you're not. Because that guy that's been doing it for a year and a half is way better than you already, because he's gone to everything out there. He's gone through courses. He's gotten certified. He's already doing continuing education. He's doing practice with his peers. He's active on the social groups out there. Keep challenging yourself. And if you don't enjoy what you do something else, because you need to find joy in what you're doing. Interpreters help so many people every day. If this is simply a paycheck for you, we all need to get paid. I am for running your business. I am for getting paid. I am for making as much money as you possibly can. But if you don't enjoy it, what are you doing here?
You have been amazing, Mark. Thank you so much for all those recommendations, because I,
Absolutely.
as a, working out there in the phones and other modalities, I feel the same way. And those are excellent, excellent recommendations. Thank you so much again for
Thank
being in
you.
the show and for being such an amazing guest.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing the other shows and your other guests as well.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Interventions of the Third Kind, Sean.
I feel like Mark has some good things to share, good point of view. Definitely some good stuff for all the folks out there in the world doing. I agree.
Keep on subscribing, guys, and bring those numbers up so we can look good on YouTube. So see you next time on another episode of Interventions of the Third Kind.
Bye, guys.